Hi, this is Jim Gibson. Thank you for joining me today. Today I want to talk about the upcoming election. It's right around the corner. You could be voting now as I speak. I should have got this out a lot earlier. But I want to talk to you. You may be anywhere in the country getting ready for the election, deciding what you're going to do. I'm going to use some examples today from North County, San Diego, because that's where I live most of the time. Now, my background is I've been involved in politics for over 30 years. I've been involved in a lot of campaigns, helped a lot of people, not only with my time and effort, but also with my money. And at the same time, I got elected to the Vista Unified School District. And I was on that board for for 20 years. Decided not to run at the end of 20 years. So I have a pretty good background on how campaigns are run. I have a pretty good background how to get elected, things like that, and what you need to do and how you need to do it. Now, I know that a lot of people say, well, there's too much money in the, in elections and things like that. Well, you need to communicate to the voters, so you need money. And usually when conservatives say that, that means that conservatives get less money because the other side always funds based on union dues and things like that. So I am a conservative Republican. As I would say, I am a Republican, part of the conservative wing of the Republican Party, because not all Republicans are conservative. It's kind of sneaky. I remember once this one lady I was on the Vista School Board with, I found out that she was a registered Republican, yet the way she voted was opposite of any conservative Republican that I know of. So I asked her one time, I said, we were by ourselves. We were going from one meeting to another, or waiting for something to happen. We were standing in the hallway of the school district, and I asked her, I said, I notice you're a registered Republican. And I said to her, I said, but you don't vote like a Republican. And she said, yeah, I don't. You're right. And she did one of these things, where she looked to the right, over her shoulder, and she looked to the left, and she said, that's the only way you can get elected in North County, San Diego. So she was not a Republican. So not everyone that claims to be a Republican is a Republican. And so you get a lot of these flyers here. They're called slates. A lot of them you just pay to get on. They endorse you, but the endorsement is useless because you just paid to get on. And most of them, is a business, and they're printers, and they just need names. They need as many names as they can to get on their slate. Not all of them are that way. Most of them are. And sometimes the individual campaign sends out these things, I am fantastic, the other side is not. And so that's why you should vote for me. It's all kind of interesting. What else is interesting in this season is somehow they think I'm a Democrat and that my wife is a Republican, so she gets a lot of stuff that I don't get, and I get a lot of stuff that she doesn't get. It's kind of interesting, because if you go down to the county board of register, it's pretty obvious that I'm registered a Republican. I've always been a Republican. I registered when I was 18 in Philadelphia. I was so sick of the Democrats and how they were destroying the city that I lived in. Even though my parents were both Democrats, I decided to register as a Republican. So one in particular I want to talk to you about, and the reason I want to talk to you about this is because this can be deceiving. And so I'm going to get back to this in a second. But I remember standing in line to place my vote one time, and a lady had something like this holding in her hand. Not this particular one, but something like this. And what she said was, or I asked her, I said, are you all ready to vote? And she said yes. And she held this, whatever flyer it was. Again, not this one. Okay, I'm not talking about this guy. I'm just using this as an example. She held up the slate, and I said, oh, that's an interesting slate. And she said, I'm just going to vote the way the Republican Party tells me to vote. And I said, well, that's interesting. And I said, do you realize that slate is not part of the Republican Party? And she says, well, it says Republicans on there. I said, yeah, that's what the printer prints on there. It says Republicans. And you got it sent to your house, and they charged a bunch of candidates to be on that slate. And the only requirement to be on that slate, again, these different papers that I have here that all you get, I'm sure, no matter where you are in the country, You pay to be on these slates. And they don't ask you questions like, are you pro-life? Are you for lower taxes? You can be on a slate that says lower taxes as long as you pay to be on that slate, even if you're a big spender and you're going to raise taxes the first week you're in. So I pointed it out to the lady, and she got a little bit upset with me. She goes, it says Republican Party recommends you vote this way. And I said, ma'am, look at it closely. It doesn't say this is from the Republican Party in San Diego. And she looked a little bit closer, and she said, you're absolutely right. It doesn't say that. I said, the Republican Party is the only one that has the right to claim that they have endorsed certain people. They go through an endorsement process. Now, I don't always agree with who they endorse. There's problems there. I was a part of the endorsement process many, many years ago. So there's problems there, and I understand those problems. And they do the best they can overall. When you get a group of people together to vote on something, you're always going to have some sort of something going on, that doesn't add up at the end, but it does happen. But overall, the San Diego Republican Party and your Republican Party, no matter where you're at in the country, usually advertises. Now, you can go onto their website. Make sure you're on their website and not on one that looks like their website or similar to their website, or flyers that say Republicans vote this way. So you got to do a little research. And you know something? As a citizen of the United States, I wouldn't say it's that the government gives you that right, because the government doesn't give you that right. They're supposed to protect your right to vote. Protect your right. You have the right to decide who is going to be in elected office. So don't ever get that confused. The government doesn't give you that right. The government should protect that right. So it's up to you. You have that right as a citizen, not the government, but as a citizen you have that right to vote a certain way. But at the same time, you got to do your research. I'm amazed. I know people, and they're really involved in sports, and they know all the statistics about sports, every single thing. But when it comes time to vote, either they don't vote, or they just pick out names that they heard. And so they get these flyers of all these people and everything else. And you think, wow, that's the person I'm going to vote for. I see their yard signs all over the place, and they got some fancy yard signs. And in fact, those yard signs, I've heard this, says teachers support a certain person. And so, I want to point out to you, just because it says teachers support doesn't mean it's true. Now, one of the things that I always judge is I want someone who is in government to have integrity and to have character. To do the right thing no matter what. Doing the right thing is more important than getting elected. Just because of who you... So if you have someone who's running and they're going to do the right thing no matter what, then that's the person you want to vote for. So it's kind of interesting. You want to look at people that have integrity, to tell the truth, that will stand up for the right things. But one of the things that I notice is that sometimes you get something like this. I'm a great supporter of Ronald Reagan. When he ran, every time he ran, I supported him. I did work, making sure people were voting for him, things like that. But to make a long story, not only that, I almost forgot. I met the president. And after he was president, of course, I was activated in Desert Storm, and I'm a former Marine captain, and I was CO of a pretty big Marine unit on Pendleton. And I got a phone call from Ronald Reagan's office, and they said he's in the area and he'd like to meet you and meet some of your people. I said, absolutely, man, I'd be honored. President of the United States, former president, best president that I knew in my lifetime, is going to meet with me. Fantastic. And so I wanted to meet this guy. And so I met him. I think he's a great guy. We talked for a while and everything else. I was honored to have him show up to meet me. That was amazing. So when I see something like this, I'm instantly, you got me intellectually, you got me emotionally. It brings back a lot of memories. I'm ready to support whoever supports Ronald Reagan. Now, you know I'm building you up to this because I'm going to show you where the big lie is. Not only is this guy support Ronald Reagan, man, he's pro-law enforcement. Now, I'm from a law enforcement family. Not me. I'm not in law enforcement. But I support law enforcement. And these people have tough jobs, man. They really do. And, their hands are constantly in California. Their hands are tied. What they can do is getting limits. The Democrats want to defund them. Yeah, that was a stupid idea, wasn't it, Democrats? Found that out, huh? Not only defund them, but they want to limit their ability to be protected under the law for their decisions that they have to make, sometimes split-second decisions. So defund them, things like that. We have stupid riots from Antifa and some of the other left-wing groups that are out there. And so they're being picked on because of that. But this guy, why? He supports law enforcement. Of course, his whole what would you call it? His whole party for the last 2 years has done everything they possibly can to demoralize law enforcement. At the same time, take away their money and restrict them. We're going to take that money away and we're going to give it to social workers. What a stupid idea that was. And of course, I think they're starting to figure that out. At least for the election, they're starting to figure it out. And so this Mike Levin had sent me this little folder, and he says, Mike Levin joins with law enforcement to expand the funding for local police. Yeah, his party, I don't think, supports that for the last 2 years that he's been an elected congressman. And this is the first time I've found out that he supports law enforcement. So that's really amazing. And here he is, and with these very serious-looking police officers standing behind him. Now, I don't know if they support him or not. I wonder if he got releases to have their picture on here, but I'm sure there's some law enforcement people who support the Democrats. And this guy is a Democrat. He's not a Republican. But he sent this to my wife. I got this. And my wife's a Republican, by the way. She's been a Republican since she started voting when she was 18. So she gets this thing, and immediately, if you didn't know anything, you'd say, man, I'm going to vote for that guy, that Levin guy. He says he's bipartisan, and then he supports different projects, and other Republicans work with him to support things like Darrell Issa. Well, once in a while, you're going to have Democrats work with Republicans on some issues. Okay, rarely, but it's going to happen. And so when he's quoting Reagan all throughout here, you would swear that he is a Republican. I mean, I'm just surprised he doesn't have a red tie that has GOP symbols on it, to be honest with you. But I want to use this as a warning. So even if you're not in North County, San Diego, thinking about supporting this Yahoo, not Ronald Reagan, but Mike Levin, the Yahoo. Reagan was a brilliant genius. I love the guy. You would actually think that he agrees with Reagan's concepts and ideas, and he's about as far from Reagan's concepts and ideas as you could be. But, so, you're not in the area voting for this guy or his person who's running against him. So you're saying, well, I'm wondering now, how does that apply to me in somewhere else in the country? Well, it applies to you somewhere else in the country because this happens all over the place. You may even got a flyer from another Democrat that looks just like this on the cover, and you thinking as a Republican that maybe this is the person you need to support. Now, I understand, you're busy. You got a job, you got a family, you got a social life, you got everything else, and you don't have time to spend researching this. Now, for me, I loved politics. I spent a lot of time in politics, did a lot of interesting things, met a lot of interesting people. So I pretty much know what Mike Levin supports, which is nothing, not even close to the Republican Party. He is about as far the other side as you could possibly be. I wouldn't even call him a liberal. He's so far left on things. He's part of the Build Back Better gang. Well, I support his opponent. Now, it's not that I volunteered to support his opponent. I don't do any of that. But I support Brian Marriott, and obviously, if he even cares, I do endorse Brian Marriott. He is a Republican, and I believe he'll do a better job, and he'll help other Republicans get elected. And he actually believes in Republican principles. This guy Levin has been going against him furiously, spending millions of dollars against Brian Marriott. So you get a lot of nonsense stuff that's just not true. It's sort of true, kind of true. Brian Marriott, he was helping Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo, had major problems a couple years ago. So it must have been Brian Marriott's fault. You got to pay it a little bit of attention here. Okay, so if you're one of those people, you're just a mom and dad, and you're working really hard, you're trying to raise your family and all, take some time. Take some time, study the issues, find out about this. Don't believe everything that comes in the mail, and a lot of this is good stuff, so don't get me wrong. But here's, it just keeps on going with this Levin guy. He just keeps on claiming that Brian Marriott's not even a Republican, which I know Brian, he is a Republican. So anyway, I hope this gives you a little bit of background in what's going on in these things, in these elections, and don't believe everything that comes in your mailbox. The other thing, if you're looking at school boards and you see the yard signs, and you have these yard signs, and a lot of times you'll see things like it says, teachers support this candidate or that candidate. Don't believe that. In fact, any yard sign that says teachers support this particular person, what they're referring to is the teachers union. And the teachers union never asks the teachers who they should support. They decide who they're telling you to support. And they put up these little yard signs, and usually the people that are even running in that position, all their yard signs are paid for by the union. I'm just going on and on. Check my other video on how to figure out who to vote for on a school board. And thank you for your time today. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe. I got some more to talk about, so I hope to talk to you in the future. Bye.